it's Antia Boyd.
And Boyd.
And we're the creators of the Magnetize The Man Summit. So really excited for you to jump right into the next interview because we have created this for you to stop attracting emotionally unavailable men, overcome your trust issue, and so much more. So you attract that right man for you that makes you feel seen, cherished, and supported.
Can't wait to see you inside the interview and get you on the path to magnetizing your man once and for all. See you there. Look forward to it.
Mwah! Hey, it's Antia Boyd with the Magnetize The Man Summit, where single, successful women crack the attraction code and live their happily ever after. And look, even though, yes, we're talking about the happily ever after, we also have to understand it's not always perfect. So we're going to have a very authentic and transparent conversation today with love expert Laurie Davis-Edwards, who is the founder of The Worthy One, a movement designed to empower women in their love lives. She has helped thousands of women meet their right relationship and helped establish more than 150 marriages. That's quite a statement. And she wrote the best-selling book, Love at First Click, the ultimate guide to online dating, and her advice has been featured in more than 500 media outlets, including the New York Times, Good Morning America, Refinery 29, the Wall Street Journal, and Women's Health. She lives in Los Angeles with her husband, who, by the way, is also a relationship coach, and her first lovely child. She's so sweet in LA. So welcome, Laurie.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
And I'm so excited to have this conversation because you are married, you have a child, so you actually know what it means to be in the trenches and not so much like up in the clouds, and relationships are always going to be great. But before we go there, I would love to hear from you. Like, why are you so passionate about what you do? Clearly you are, after looking at all your accomplishments.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I feel like as women, a lot of us really need to heal in order to be in the relationship that we want. And that's the place that I come from when I coach. Because there's stuff that's happened to us in the past that if we hold on to it, whether consciously or subconsciously, because so much of it has just been subconscious beliefs that have been ingrained in us over time about what love is or what is going to happen in relationships, and we let our fears and these beliefs hold us back, that, even when you're in a relationship, those things still are there. So I love what I do because it really, when you change these beliefs, when you create new ones, what you're doing is you're really creating a whole new world. It's like a whole new life. And it's amazing to see the things that happen for my clients, not just in their love life, but in their whole life. So I love like the process of transformation and seeing what can happen when people heal their hearts.
Absolutely. And tell us a little bit more about your own personal journey. What was your journey like of transformation?
So, throughout my life, I dated a lot. I was very curious about relationships, and my mom and my dad were never married. My biological dad were never married. My mom had me at 17. So that really was part of what shaped me. Seeing her as a single mom, but then also watching her for the first 7 years of my life fall in love, like genuine love, with the man that she's married to now. And I got to be part of their love story, which I think is like really rare for kids. And so I experimented, with a lot of relationships. And it took me a while to meet my husband. And he and I have gone through so much. Like getting to him, I had to go through so much in these other relationships. I had to really learn from them, heal from them, continue to shift through them. And like, we're still going through it, right? I think there's this belief, especially when you're single, that like you're going to have a relationship and everything's going to be great. Like if only you could get X, Y, Z, then like, of course life would be amazing. And yes, like life is amazing. And like life is real. and there's still stuff you're going to go through as a couple. And so, yeah, I mean, that's really been what my journey is that like this idea of perfectionism just really doesn't exist. And when we put that on ourselves, we make life so hard, harder than it needs to be.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. And, and it's really time to just really take this sort of idea off the pedestal. One thing I always say, the soulmate is real, but the pedestal is not.
Mm-hmm. Love it.
So what do you see when those single women, there's thousands of single women you've worked with over the years, what do you see when it comes to perfectionism, putting things on a pedestal? What are sort of like, their blind spots? What are some of their, shortcomings, if you will, when they come to you that they are not aware of when it comes to dating?
I think awareness is like the biggest piece. And so thank you for bringing that up, because we are so unaware of like what's going on with ourselves. Right. Yeah. And, in my program, Abundant Love, we spend a whole week on what I call blocking behaviors, which are like the things that you've just, because of these subconscious beliefs that you have, the things that you do that get in your way. And so, for example, one thing is looking for the reasons to say no. That's a blocking behavior. And that's, I think, a big thing that ties into perfectionism is this idea that like, you can tell based on someone's profile whether or not they're right for you. Like that just doesn't exist. Like you can tell, if they're worth a shot or not, but we don't know. And so, but there's this hoping that the date you go on is going to be the perfect one, hoping that you're going to communicate with the right guys. And so what happens is we look for the reasons to say no. We look for the reasons to say like, well, he doesn't make enough money, or I'm not sure about like the fact that he has kids, or like picking apart people's profiles. And a lot of times it's done in even smaller ways than that. Like those are more like bigger statement ways. But sometimes I've heard people be like, well, I'm not sure about him because he skis and I don't ski. Like,
okay. Big deal breaker.
I know, right? And so, yeah, I think that even we look for perfect. Yeah. Right? Like we look for perfect on paper does not mean though that he's going to be perfect in real life. Like your perfect quote unquote partner, the guy who's going to be the best match for you isn't necessarily going to be anything that you think. Right? Like, I mean, he could be something totally different than what you have imagined and what's on your checklist. But what's most important is how he makes you feel. Like, isn't that it? Isn't it all about falling in love and feeling like you have a partner that you can live your whole life with? It's not about what other people are going to think when you show up to the party. It's not about what you like, whether or not he wears chinos and you think those are out of style. Like, it's not about those things.
I love your examples. Keep coming with those. Every time when I feel like I've heard it all,
Yeah. And another big thing that we do, another big blocking behavior is we expect ourselves to be perfect. Like we put such emphasis on how we need to be and show up. And really what that causes when we show up with the mask, if you will, of like, I'm perfect, everything's great in my life, like, right, you need to want me. Instead of us showing up authentic, being real, just being you, then the connection isn't genuine. And then the relationship doesn't last. And so we put so much emphasis and stress on ourselves by having to be someone we're not, too.
Absolutely. Well, and then the women are surprised that they find out that the man is like avoidant or has conflicts inside of himself. It's like, well, how consistent and congruent have you been? Right?
We attract who we are. Like we have mirror neurons in our body, and our mirror neurons attract like things and people that are like us. Like, it is actually scientific. And vice versa, we are attracted to people who are like us.
Right.
And so that's why in my program, Abundant Love, we really focus a lot on you and your relationship with yourself and who you are, and getting really clear on what you're doing in your own life, right? Not just in your dating or in your love life, but like what's happening with you. Because when you transform, who you attract transforms. Not that there's anything wrong with you now, because there's not, but there's probably parts of you that are just kind of like locked away that can be unlocked. Things that maybe you don't believe you can connect with anymore because you work 70-hour weeks or whatever. We put all these limits on ourselves based on our circumstances. And sometimes those limits are really us just saying like, well, I can't fully be me because.
Right. Exactly. And do you have an example story of like those 150 marriages where you had a woman who had those beliefs, and then through working with you and also understanding what her blocks were and what she said no to, helped her to actually walk into the right marriage?
I actually have a client getting married in a couple of months. I'm going to her wedding, and when we first started working together, I mean, what we look at in Abundant Love, we start by looking at fear, right? And not in a like big scary way, but in a way of saying like, hey, what's actually going on here that's holding you back? And for her, and for a lot of the women that I work with, it's this sense of not being good enough. You know, it's the fear of being unworthy. And so how that, and trusting yourself too, right? So that was another thing that she dealt with. And what we worked on a lot with her was like accessing her intuition rather than needing the answers from everyone else, from her friends, having to like poll them, well, what do you think about him? Or, you know, that really it all comes from inside. There was a lot of attachment style stuff that we worked on together too, because there was some like attachment to people who are unavailable, which is another big blocking behavior. And something else we do when we are afraid we're not perfect, or he might not be perfect, right? Is we go for people who are unavailable, who aren't going to get to know us on that deep level. And so we worked through all of that. We made huge breakthroughs for her, and she met this guy who, like we were talking about earlier, is totally not at all what she expected. But he makes her feel really amazing, really worthy, really safe, really celebrated and cherished. Actually, I remember her using that word specifically the first time we talked about him. And now they're getting married. So for her, the work has continued, because like we were talking about, it's not just the dating phase either. Like once she got into a relationship with him, there was a lot to work through too. Like, is she ready to move in with him? There was some, like a little bit of triggers that happened. Like he might say something and it would trigger her fear. And I think that's just real. Like that happens to us in life in all areas, right? So of course it's going to happen in an intimate, like connected relationship too. Yeah, I'm really so happy for her. She's made like such huge breakthroughs, and I know that those will continue.
It's so great. You know, like it's really about transforming the relationships you even have to certain emotions that you don't want to display, and how healing that can be in relationship to actually experience the reflection of your partner, versus like when you're single, you're not necessarily having that reflection instantly, right?
Yeah, exactly. I think that Yeah, I do with my clients. We have a lot of conversations with ourselves in different parts of ourselves, like our doubt, for example. I think it's so often that when we hear fear or when we hear doubt or something like that, we just want to run from it, or we want to reframe it, or we want to say like, no, 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 like you're crazy, goodbye, and like slam the door.
Right.
But the truth is, like, you keep slamming the door long enough and it's going to come screaming, running at you, you know? And so sometimes you just need to let those parts of you talk, like let the doubt out, let it say what it's going to say and hear it, because then it's not going to be screaming at you all the time.
Right.
Yeah.
I'm sure, the listeners are like burning to hear, specifically because your husband is also a relationship coach, is how do those two handle tougher conversations?
Oh, yeah. I mean, things aren't perfect with us either, right? Like they aren't in any relationship, even when you're two relationship coaches. We just went through a big transformation in our relationship, and there was a big like boundary issue with us, and we were both just really ignoring it, to be honest. Like I think that we were sort of running from it and like hiding from it a bit. And then we confronted it, and a lot of it was stuff that was going on with him, and I said like, this isn't okay. You're not okay. Like something's going on here, and like this has to change, and that's scary for me because my core fear is abandonment. One of my core fears is abandonment, right? Because my dad abandoned me when I was a kid. But like it was the worthy one part in me saying like, no, you deserve all of it, and right now you're not getting all of it. And he really has transformed. I mean, we have together, and so has he. And I think like the thing that I appreciate about us now, I think the thing that really has improved the most is communication. And we hear so much about like how communication is important, yada yada, but in a world where like, it sounds like it's a cliche almost, doesn't it?
Totally, right? Like, okay, tell me something new.
But when you're holding things in, when you're hiding things from your partner, feelings, I don't mean like big lies or secrets, but like when you hold in your feelings and you don't share them, they like grow and it becomes bigger, and then you become disconnected. And so communication with us, like we talk about everything, and we'll even say something like, we might have a little confrontation and then about something silly. Like the other day we had a little confrontation about stuff in the bathroom. Like there was like no room on the rack,
Right.
And then afterwards I said, I don't like how we did that. And he was like, what do you mean? And I'm like, I just don't like the way we approached that conversation. And so we kind of like had a redo.
Yeah, like a reset button, right?
Yeah.
A reset button. Totally.
Yeah. And so it was also a way for us to like acknowledge that didn't really work for us, but what will next time? And let's like get to a place where we don't feel like, we're not leaving the conversation with like that funky feeling.
Right.
So I think that's a big thing we do now, is we really like, we speak so loudly to each other, not loudly, like meaning honestly, that we really resolve things when they're happening instead of letting them build.
Yeah, it's so important, I mean, Brody and I, we even do like a shadow ceremony every year when we renew our vows. And we're always like, is this fear that we had last year still alive? Because it might be something different that feels even more vulnerable. It's so important to speak to the not good enoughness or fear of being trapped or whatever else, all the other fears that are coming up when it comes to relationships. That's pretty normal that comes up.
Yeah. And like men have them too. I think sometimes we forget that like men have fears too, and men feel like they're not good enough too. Like this is something like we deal with, but it's also something they go through. And so we can use this as something to relate to one another about, rather than feel like we're so different.
Yeah, totally. Totally. Yeah. And I mean, I see that with my husband too. You know, he wants to make me happy. And, you know, men that take this so personal, almost if they can't make you happy, as if it's like their fault, or, you know, they need to change something. He's like, oh, babe, it's not your fault. You know,
Yeah, you actually need to make yourself happy. Like I'm going to offer that every single thing that you want from in a partner, you first need to be able to give to yourself. And if you cannot, then like having it from a partner actually isn't going to solve it.
Right, right. Yeah, what I really hear, what you have with your husband is really this interdependent relationship where, you know, you take care of those parts, like the abandonment part, or, you know, whatever part he has, but you're also coming together. You also have this couple identity where you put the energy together, right?
That's exactly it. And, you know, in a world where like he and I, in our lives, like individually, we're so into personal growth. It also feels like because we are both growing separately, then our relationship is also growing too together. And I think sometimes I hear from other couples that there's a fear if like they're into personal growth, that they're going to grow apart, right?
Yeah.
But there's a way to actually take the insight that you're getting from your own experience and bring it into your relationship. Bring it in. You can even bring it into the first few dates that you're having with someone, because it shows up in these ways of how you communicate and how you connect and how you relate. And that's a really beautiful thing.
You know, I think this is such a good point that you're making, Laurie, around this fear of, because I've heard that too, of personal growth being, but I think there's also like another fear to address underneath, because there's already an assumption, probably an abandonment fear that needs to be addressed, right? So it has nothing to do with the personal development for someone who thinks that way, because not everyone does.
Yeah, and it's also probably a feeling of, it could also be, though a lot of people probably may not want to admit this, but if you were to really get quiet with yourself, like, is there something that you feel around him not being good enough? And because you're doing this personal growth and he may or may not be, like, is it a reflection also of how you think about him and how you're holding him in your relationship?
Say more about that, Laurie. I think that's very fascinating and something that's very hidden to a lot of consciousness of women.
So there's a way in which we hold people in our lives, right? Like you were talking about the pedestal. The pedestal is like kind of idolizing, right? Holding them at like a level that isn't actually rooted in reality. Then there's also, on the opposite end, there's a way in which we hold people really low, right? Where we don't hold them as like powerful. And usually this is like, we don't do this consciously, right? Like this is not, there's not anything wrong with this. Usually the reason why we hold someone low is because we're telling ourselves lots of stories about what's happening for them that may or may not be true. Like, well, like he wouldn't be into personal development work. Like he doesn't do that type of thing. And so, you know, like he's never going to change, becomes the belief, right? Or whatever it is. But there's a way in which we can hold people pretty low too and not give them the benefit of the doubt. And what happens when we hold people low is we don't give them the opportunity to grow with us. Like we actually are keeping them kind of stuck and down, right?
Right.
And so in a world where we're growing, we're moving forward, we're sort of like, no, you're back there and you almost can't come over here because I can't trust that you're going to get this, right? And so when we, like what we want to do is is to hold someone high, not idolized, but hold them high, right? Like say, I'm going to say whatever is authentic and true for me. And like, it's going to be received however it's received, and that's perfect. So I'll give you an example. Right now, I'm exploring like a lot of my spirituality. I'm going pretty deep into my spirituality and my beliefs and all of that right now. And I had a conversation with Thomas the other day, and I was like, you know, one thing I just want to like give a voice to is I'm a little bit afraid that this is going to distance us. I'm a little bit afraid that me, you know, getting so in touch with my spirituality, even though he's like a spiritual guy too. I'm definitely going on like another level. I'm like, I feel like I'm on a journey of sorts. And I said, you know, I'm like a little bit afraid that I might go too far and leave you behind, or that you might not understand me anymore, or that I might have new values that maybe don't align with you. Like, I don't know what I'm going to find. I'm literally going into the unknown, and it's like actually not scary for me. It's fun for me. It's exciting for me. But the one thing that's a little scary is I'm like, our relationship just got to like this good solid place, and I'm a little afraid this might rock it again. And so if I were holding him low, I would not have that conversation, right? I'd just be like, I'm just going to hide this stuff from him. And I'm like, because it's not so perfect right now. And I don't know what he's going to think of it. And I tell myself all these stories of what stories he might have, right? And that is what could happen if I held him low. Like maybe he doesn't even know that I'm exploring my spirituality.
Yeah.
Right. And then one day, what happens, because naturally what's going to happen is I'm going to shift. And then one day shit's going to hit the fan, and I'm going to have to like talk about values that have changed or big things that have come up for me. And he wouldn't have been on the journey with me, not with me. Like he's not doing this too, but he's not sitting beside me, listening to me, like hearing what's going on for me. And so, so I get to hold him high and say, you know what, he can handle this. Like he can handle knowing that I'm afraid, and knowing that like some of this stuff is what might happen. Like, I don't know. And like, that is ideally where we want to hold our partner, trusting that they can handle whatever we're going through in life, or whatever our thoughts and feelings are.
Yeah, I'm really getting when you say that you really trust in the resourcefulness of your partner when you hold them high, not on a pedestal, but high, right? Versus when you hold them low, it's like, it's almost like a little boy, like it can handle it. They can't deal with it, right? Mama has to protect them from all the evil that's out there and all the bad possibilities.
Exactly. Yeah. And then something happens, and maybe it's a small thing, but it becomes a big thing. Whereas, you know, otherwise it would have been a small conversation. It becomes this like big thing because you didn't allow your partner to be in your life, right? Because I think this is part of what happens when we have our perfect mask on is we leave a lot of people out of things that are going on with us.
Yeah.
For fear of how it's going to look or how it might seem to them.
Absolutely. And also ultimately, when you look at it, that when you hold someone low, it ultimately comes from insecurity too, because you want to feel, not you personally, but you know, like that person wants to feel superior. Because if you hold someone low, and why would you want to feel superior if you're inherently confident and secure inside of yourself?
Yeah, and holding someone low can come from perfection too, right? It can come from feeling like, I don't know what it would be like to show them this part of me, so I'm just going to keep them here, you know, or to let them know this is going on. So like, they're still over here. Like, it's all right. They don't need to know. Right. And ultimately that's kind of a reflection of you,
Mm-hmm.
Right? But it's still you holding them low. Like it actually is still how you are dealing with him and your relationship, even though it's something that you're maybe afraid of showing within yourself.
Totally. It's so true. We're going back to the neuron conversation.
Yes.
Well, Laurie, I could continue this conversation forever and ever. We're barely, touched the tip of the iceberg here. And so for the women who are really fascinated by what you shared and want to learn so much more, understand you have a free gift for them.
I do. So one of the things that is something that I coach around all the time, and a big thing that is important to me too in how I approach my relationship is my intuition. Because our intuition, like we were talking about, it's inside of you, whether you're listening to it or not, whether you're following it or not, it's there. And when we can access our own intuition, we don't have to poll everyone and get the answers. We know the answer.
Mm-hmm.
We don't even have to analyze it. Well, I like these things about him, but I don't like these things about him. So what should I do? None of that has to come into play, because it's just, And so my free gift is called How to Know If He's the One. And it's really a free guide that's going to teach you all about your intuition, the difference between your intuition and your fear, and how to access that. And it gives you 5 specific questions to ask on the first 5 dates, so that you are asking yourself to get clear from a place of intuition rather than a place of analyzing or going into your masculine.
What a great gift. And I hear this question all the time. So I'm sure the ladies will just be all over that. So thank you so much for being here today, Laurie. I've certainly enjoyed all the wisdom that you had to share. And I cannot even imagine the woman who's sitting on the other side and contemplating and integrating all the information that you shared, and she'll probably want to watch this video over and over again. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
All right, ladies, I'll talk to you next time. Take care.
Was that absolutely delicious? We just love how every single expert has those juicy pieces of wisdom for you to enjoy. Look, if you want to own the entire Magnetize the Man series, we invite you to get our Magnetize the Man VIP All Access package. Not only will you own the entire video series, but also you will get our Magnetize the Man Masterclass that teaches you the 3-step formula, step by step, on how to attract the right man for you. You also get some other juicy secret trainings and a one-on-one call with me where we personalize your individual journey to attract that right man for you as soon as possible. So look, to get that, click the link below that says get access now, and you get it all. Own the entire series, including all the juicy bonuses, well worth over $1,400 for nearly the fraction of the cost. All right, we will see you in the next interview.
See you soon.
Bye.
Bye.
Mwah.
Mwah.